Hey guys, Brent Hull Build Show at the Staub House, the 1928 Purity Revival House, talking today about metalwork, decorative metalwork, the fine craft of metalwork, right? Steel windows, how to replicate some of this stuff today in the Build Show. Come join me. Okay, so today we're going to meet my good friend Doug Bracken with Wyman Metalcraft of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Okay, he is the most knowledgeable guy on ironwork and metalwork I know. So I called him in here because we talked about those beautiful staircases before and how wonderfully crafted they were. What would it take to craft those again today? We've also decided on the outside of this house that instead of these terrible production windows that drive me crazy, we're actually going to put back those original steel windows that we think are critical. We're going to line this outside, this wall's coming out, and we're going to line that with those original steel windows, but we got to make one. So we're going to talk to Doug about that. Come on, let's talk to him. You know, these beautiful windows, it's so frustrating to me, right, that they took these out, they put a replacement window in. We saw these, the craftsmanship, I was saying on my first video, I think they're critical.
Yeah.
You know, you have a relationship with them. What do you think?
Sure. Well, it's an interesting question, Brent, because the age of the house would tell us that it could be Criddle or possibly Hope's windows out of Jamestown, New York, 1928. That was a great period for steel casement windows all over the United States. So it's an important question. I don't know that I can answer it until we start peeling back some of the paint.
Sure. So, I mean, steel windows, right, they start in the 20s. You start to see them advertised. We start seeing them in period revival houses. They're really popular in the 30s into the 50s, right? So this would have been a little bit earlier.
Steel windows have been preferred by distinguished and discriminating homeowners for decades. So I think that what you've got here, whether it's Criddle or Hope's, are some really fine windows that have been here almost 100 years. So they're ready to go another 100 years with a little bit of care.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so, which drives me crazy why they replaced them. So some of the distinctive things about these, windows, right? The hardware is brass, you think?
Right.
And we've got putty glazing, which we don't do anymore. That's what you were telling me earlier. Right?
Yep. So I brought an example here of a more modern way to set glass, and they use aluminum glazing beads now to set the glass instead of putty.
When did that change? I mean, if you were dating houses and someone has steel windows in their house, they're going to have putty glazing into the 50s or 60s?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
I think so. And then the aluminum glazing beads become more popular, particularly as the depth of the window for insulated glass, the depth of that window increases, and so this, it becomes harder and harder to putty set when you're using a 5/8 inch insulated unit. So it's important to, if you're trying to date your windows, think about it from that perspective.
Sure. The nice thing for you is we are actually needing to make another pair, okay? So we've got pair there, we've got this pair there, they're going on that outside wall, and we need a third piece. Is that possible? Can we get another one made?
Sure, yeah. So this profile is the same depth. This is a modern.
So this is the same company, 150
years later, making similar product.
They're still making the same thing. Great.
We may not be able to match the hinges exactly, but we can get pretty close.
Okay.
And so that's where we need to go next.
Well, and your company could custom craft those hinges if we needed, right?
Sure, yeah. If that was really important to the architect, we could certainly provide custom-made hardware and hinges to match this beautiful work. So Brent, it's important to note that these windows have probably been moved, or this was maybe an exterior room at some point.
Well, what really happened is this is an addition. So we know that this was picked up from somewhere and moved here.
Right.
So now, even though we're both inside, this is probably the original inside.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And we see that because you have this nice brass hardware here on the inside, and the Cremone bolt is on the inside, and then this outside surface is fairly smooth. And once you can get around here, you can see that the putty set glazing is on the outside, so it sheds water.
Yeah. And now on the inside, this hardware, brass or bronze, this is a casement stay, is that right?
Right.
So instead of it blowing in the wind, right, instead of it, you know, slapping closed or something, you would tighten these bolts or the screw, and it would keep it locked in that position.
It's kind of a friction stay is how that's referred to now as well.
Okay.
And there's another thing that's important while we're talking about hot rolled steel windows, because there's a lot of people making steel windows and doors these days.
For sure.
Hot rolled steel windows have these really exotic profiles that allow for a double rebate, a place where you can seal the door from the outside in two places when it's closed. That's not the same as a steel tube door or something that's made out of angle iron, which is very common today in contemporary culture.
Well, I mean, so the new steel doors that we sometimes put on our new house that clients ask for, like you're saying, are the tube, right? Where they are taking, you know, raw tube steel and just cutting it, welding it together, sticking glass in it, as opposed to this. And you said hot rolled, and I don't know what that is.
So that means that there's a very specific shape to this profile, and it's very unusual. You don't go to the steel yard or the lumber yard and pick up these shapes. They come from one mill in Europe.
Okay.
There's only one place that we all buy these from. So that's an important distinction for these style of windows and doors.
Okay, I've got one more thing to show you.
Okay.
It's this balustrade. I just think it's magical, and I need to know too, you know, what's going on there. It seems like today we just can't get this made anymore.
Right. Let's go have a look.
Yeah. So the reason I fell in love with this, and first the client walked in and goes, "Do we have to keep that?" And I was like, "Yes, we have to keep that," right? So one, I've seen these in English stair books, right? This almost musical looking piece here. I just fell in love with it because I've seen it before historically. Staub we've done another Staub house. I know he copies and looks, and he had his inspirations and things like that. So I love this. At the same time, I don't know if there are 10% of guys in Fort Worth or even the country that can even do this. And so I guess you're here to help me back that up and walk me through, one, how they made this, and then just the skill level and just what your thoughts are when you see it.
Sure. Well, Brent, it's a beautiful railing, and I'm glad that it hasn't been overpainted, and I'm glad it hasn't been removed, which is oftentimes what you find with older homes that have been modified. This is a really good example of traditional wrought iron craftsmanship, and I say wrought iron in the sense
like
that this is wrought iron, the alloy. Because of the date, 1928, we know that this is most likely wrought iron as opposed to modern steel, which is what we end up using most of the time now. But in addition to being wrought iron, the alloy, it is hand wrought. And so this is formed over an anvil, formed with blacksmithing tools, using drifts and punches, and even this delicate water leaf here, which is formed by using a repoussé method out of fairly thin sheet iron to create this look. And there's a little bit of soldering you can see here where they've used a brazing torch and they've soldered this together, but overall the execution is extremely clean. You don't see all of those gloppy welds that so many fabricators
because they've actually
rely on.
Punched through it.
They've done their homework here.
Okay, now you've said like 6 things that I think are going to be confusing to people. First thing, the wrought iron, right? Because wrought iron is this, people say, I need a wrought iron fence, right? And you can't get wrought iron anymore.
So
right?
wrought iron is only available as reclaimed material. Wrought iron, much like cast iron, you leave them outside all day long, they never degrade. And wrought iron has the characteristic of being extremely corrosion resistant.
Okay. When someone says, I want a wrought iron fence, they don't realize that what they're asking for is just so stupid expensive that they really don't want that. It's a term, right, that's been overused or misused or whatever, right? Because wrought iron is this historic material, right?
So wrought iron is both a noun, it is historic material that's no longer available, and it's also a verb in common use. Right. So it refers to the act of working things by hand wrought. This is a great example of a wrought iron balustrade, which is made of wrought iron, the alloy, and it's hand work. So you've got them both right here.
Okay, so you used another word, repoussé. Did I say it right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that is this kind of sheet metal stuff. Is that? What is repoussé?
Correct. So repoussé is blacksmithing using very thin sheet metal. Could be brass or bronze, or it could be, in this case, wrought iron. So these leaves are formed by hand over the anvil, And that kind of sheet metal work it's closer to silversmithing than it is blacksmithing. But in this case, what we have is we have the repoussé artistry matched with the blacksmithing artistry of this original balustrade.
Well, and that repoussé is what you see when you go to France and England when they are decorating their iron gates. You see these delicate elements, right? That's those pieces. It's pretty common there. 1928, okay, we're making this, right? Do they have a King architectural catalog where there's all the different parts and I need a water lily leaf or right? They didn't do that. This was, how would this have been made in 1928?
The interesting thing about 1928 in that era is there were actually catalogs of leaves that you could buy from Europe.
Okay.
Yes, I've got several in my shop. Nice. I've got some examples of leaves. Not this leaf. This looks hand-produced for this commission, in my opinion.
Okay. But I mean, even like these little pieces, would he have made those by hand, or is that a catalog?
Right. No, none of this comes out of a catalog. And in fact, in that time period, the number of shapes and sizes available to the metal fabricator doing decorative work like this was very limited. Yeah. So you would have squares and you would have rounds. Those would come from the mill, but if you wanted a rectangle or another shape of a certain size, like this little collar right here, you had to make tooling, you had to use heat and a hammer, and you had to make it yourself. So you might have that available out of a catalog, but if you need that piece right there, you would have to make it on the anvil.
One of the ways I look at new metal work and grade it, and you're the master, not me, is the shape of the twirl. Okay, and I'll see it where it's like they, bend it in a vise and bend it in a vise, and you see this crip, 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 crip.
Right.
This has a really pretty scroll. Was there a way to do that in the way that it becomes smaller there at the end, right? That had to be hand worked, right?
Yes. This is a simple tapered scroll. These guys here, this is a tapered ball scroll. So making these beautiful arcs is kind of integral to the beauty of this thing. And you can see how these blend nicely. Those radiuses come together very nicely.
You're describing here this beautiful nautilus shape right there, right? And this other one here, and how those are put together, and the fact that someone takes the time not to just take strap steel and weld it together, and you see these lumps, but they've actually ground it out so that it's smooth and it comes together, right? We're looking at, hours of practice and detail that just takes longer, right? It's just...
Once you make your tooling, once you make special hammer dies to create these tapers and these collars and these shapes right here, once you do all that, a skilled artisan, it might take him 20 or her 20 or 30 hours to put one of those together this way, nicely.
All right, cool. Thank you so much. This has been so helpful, and I hope that you guys have appreciated what beautiful metalwork is and how this makes a house better, right? And how this handcrafted work and these details are where the magic is. Okay guys, the reason we look at these details, and the reason I wanted to spend time talking about great metalcraft is because I want you to raise your bar, right? I want you to find better craftsmen, right? Not just someone who can do it cheap, but someone who knows how to do it, right? And so once you find those guys, you begin to build yourself a team that you can accomplish beautiful stuff, right? Because I don't want your customer to come to you and say, hey, do you know how to do this? No one does that anymore, right? That's not the answer. The answer is you have a team of people who can help you accomplish beautiful things. That's how you become a master builder. So I'm going to put a link in the bio for Doug Bracken's company, Weinman Metalcraft. They're out of Tulsa. They're a great company. You need to know them. They could be a resource in your tool bag and help you build better. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook, Hull Millwork, Hull Homes. I'm Brent Hull. Thanks for watching.